Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the cryptoverse. Today, we're going to talk about Bitcoin and the US dollar. If you guys like the content, please subscribe to the channel. Give the video a thumbs up. Also, check out the Telegram channel, which you can find a link to in the description below. Let's go ahead and jump in. So, the battle continues. We've been discussing this battle for a long time. Namely because we essentially reached the same level of valuation on DXY, or the US dollar currency index, that we also reached in early 2018, which ushered in the Bitcoin bear market. Okay? And ultimately speaking, I think that the future, the short term movement for Bitcoin, whether it ends up going back up or going down to newer lows, will ultimately be dictated by what DXY ends up doing. Of course, this could not be the case, but historically, what we've seen is that when DXY, for instance, in say 2017, was dropping 15%, Bitcoin was going up, like 20x or so. Okay, so we've seen these types of moves before. In March, DXY started dropping, and it dropped all the way down to around, all the way down almost 14%. And it essentially ended its descent, at least its short term descent, in the first week or so of January. Maybe around January 6th or January 8th. If you go look at the peak for Bitcoin, let's go find out what day it occurred on. It looks like it also occurred around January 8th. So give or take a couple days, the DXY bottom, at least for now, more or less corresponded to Bitcoin's top. And actually, if we zoom in, we can get a more specific day so we actually know exactly when it happened. So it looks like DXY bottomed on January 6th, and Bitcoin had its local top on January 8th. But as measured since March, Bitcoin is up almost 1,000% from the bottom of the wick. 980% at the peak. Now it's back down to 739%, but at the peak it was up almost 1,000%, which is over 10x, because 1,000% is actually 11x. 900% is 10x. So while Bitcoin was going up about 10x from March until early January, DXY was dumping about 14% or so, which is very similar to the move we saw in 2017. So here, I think DXY, the dollar, is trying to put up a stand, right? It's trying to. Whether it will or not, we simply do not know yet. But we can tell that it's trying to put up a stand just like it did over here. And it chopped sideways back in 2018 for approximately 4 months before ultimately trending back up and really confirming that the Bitcoin bear market was going to be lasting for quite a while. And you can see that this did not really reverse course until January, or until March. This uptrend did not really reverse course until March, and it brought us all the way back down to the same level that USD fought back in early 2018. So we speculated a few months ago that this might be a level that DXY tries to take a stand. And if it does, even if it were to reverse trend here, it could chop sideways for a few months, just like it did back in 2018. It probably, there's a decent chance that it will try to, it'll ultimately flirt on which way it's going to go for a little while before ultimately deciding, okay, we're heading back up, or we're heading further down. If we were to bounce from here, if the dollar were to bounce from there, it doesn't necessarily mean that Bitcoin can't continue up in the short term, but I think it's going to make Bitcoin's, the order for Bitcoin to do so a lot harder to carry out, simply because we know, historically speaking, that Bitcoin does a lot better when the dollar is trending down, and when the dollar is trending up, Bitcoin doesn't do quite as well. So in the event that the dollar were to ultimately trend back up, it would probably make it more likely that Bitcoin trends back down. However, on the contrary, if the dollar is unable to hold this level and continues pushing down like that, then there's a higher probability that Bitcoin will continue heading north, heading up in its valuation. So this is just something to keep an eye on. So if you want to have some indication of where Bitcoin may be headed, I would suggest just adding DXY to your watch list, the US dollar currency index, looking at where it is, noting that if it's, between 88 up to around 91, this is the same area that it took a stand back in 2018. And if it takes a stand here again, then it will make it harder on Bitcoin to continue on. However, we also need to look at the big picture, because there's certainly no guarantee that this level will hold just because it held in 2018. Let me show you what I mean. If you zoom out on the dollar, the index of the dollar, well, it's in a more macro level downtrend if you actually look at the whole thing. We had one major concave up pattern here that lasted from 1986, 1985 or so, all the way to 2001. So this was approximately, if we just take a measured move from top to top or so, it was about 826 weeks, which if we switch this over to say months, maybe it'll make it a little bit more easier to understand. So here it's about 190 months. If you go over here and go from this top to the next top, it was about 186 months. So it could be that we're just simply, trending down over the long haul. And perhaps the future is for the dollar is actually down. And if that is the case, and if we see it trend down over the next several years, then I think that would be very good for Bitcoin. So we need to keep that in mind, that ultimately, if the dollar had not put up a stand in 2018, there would have actually been a decent probability that the Bitcoin run would have continued. However, this is not what history shows us. The dollar put up a stand in early 2018, and it ushered in the Bitcoin bear market. We're at a crossroads yet again. Okay, we are at a crossroads again. Even if the dollar does end up holding and trending back up, I don't think that it would be necessarily a good thing for Bitcoin in the short term, but I don't think it's going to completely preclude Bitcoin from continuing on its general cycle, for this market cycle. I think it would ultimately continue on. But if the dollar does put up a stand here, it will certainly make it difficult for Bitcoin in the short term. Note that you can't always look at these on a day-to-day time frame. It's not like every single day that the dollar is up, Bitcoin is down, or vice versa. Generally, what you're looking at is a full momentum shift in the market. And generally speaking, momentum is hard to break, right? I mean, things that are trending up are more likely to trend up than things that are not trending up. So there's a higher probability that this uptrend continues and this downtrend continues than it reversing course, just based on momentum. However, it doesn't mean that it can't reverse course. That's why it's so hard predicting when the market will turn around, because it can often, as they say, it can remain irrational longer than you can remain solvent. So you have to consider that we simply do not know if this will be the turnaround point or not. And if it is the turnaround point, then it's going to make it harder for Bitcoin. If it's not, then for Bitcoin, it's more likely blue skies ahead. So let me know what you guys think about this analysis. Do you think the dollar will hold support here? Or do you think the dollar will continue to put in new lows throughout 2021? The general narrative, of course, is that, well, the money supply has increased significantly over the last year. Since March, it's gone up by about 26%. It's a pretty significant increase in the money supply. If we look at the general trend we were on, we were not supposed to see this level of money supply until around 2024. So in terms of the money circulating around, there's actually more money. It's not necessarily that black and white. For instance, a lot of private cash will simply dry up when there's more public money being moving around in the economy. But regardless, we do know that M2 has increased a lot over the last year, and therefore there's a lot more money circulating around. We also know that the dollar has been losing value over the last year. And so the general narrative, of course, is, well, if the Fed continues printing money and this continues going up, then the dollar should continue losing value. And that does seem like a decent story to tell. However, as we said before the dollar started putting up a stand in the short term, just because there will be money printed does not necessarily indicate that the dollar will still lose value. Remember, markets are rather efficient, and they can price things in long before they actually happen. One of the common sayings is, by the time you know about the news or you hear the news, the market has already priced it in. So you have to consider this. Of course, it's more likely, I think, than not that the dollar continues down. But at the same time, we also have to keep an eye on the fact that this was a key level back in 2018, and this is exactly the same level we're at now. So I would say watch DXY. You need to watch the US dollar currency index to get a better idea as to where Bitcoin may be headed in 2021. If the dollar goes up, it's going to be harder for Bitcoin to reach that six-figure mark, and that six-figure mark in the short term. If this keeps trending down, it's going to make it a lot easier on Bitcoin. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up. Also check out the Telegram channel, which you can find a link to in the description below. Finally, we have the premium list at intothecryptoverse.com. That's linked down below as well if you want exclusive access to premium content. That'll wrap it up for the video. Thank you guys for subscribing, and I'll see you next time. Bye.